Okay, so we are good. Okay, so can I have your attention, please? So guys, so let's go to today's lecture and take a look at this number. This number, there is 59 slides to go prior to midterm exam. And I'm thinking that today there will be new topics to discuss, but next week no more new topics to discuss. And I have a summary included in this 59 slides. And I already got the request from you that you would like to see how are the exam questions. So I have a questions with me, so we can take a look at that, and also we can start preparing us to midterm exam. And as promised, you have an opportunity to take one question off from the list and select one question that for 100% certainty will be in an exam paper. Not sure how is that we do this voting action. Should we do it next Monday by just the yelling, like who is yelling the loudest will be the winner, or any other? That's the way to go. Okay, sounds good to me. So so you can, I encourage you to discuss prior to next lecture. So try to make a team. I know that there is one team is a Russian team. Is it the strongest? Largest for sure, but is it the strongest? That I don't know. Other teams, so you can discuss and try to make an agreement. What is a question that you would like to take off, and what is a question that for sure you want to have in exam paper. Now, this time already, I recommend you to do the registration to midterm exam. And now, here's the trick. I want to emphasize this because when you do the enrollment, you need to use the code that it is actually written here. So make sure you're using, let me see how is my drawing today. Make sure that you're using this code, this one here. This is a key for success, so it has to be the course code, and then we as a midterm exam. We as a midterm exam, right? So then next week there will be only a summary. No additional new information next week. Then what follows is that we're going to have an exam in week 9, and then 3 following lectures will be visiting topics. The first one, which is in week 10, will be related to biomechanics, and then the one in week 11 will be coming from the consulting company that is specialized to advanced use of finite element method. It is explaining what are the all things you can do with the finite element modeling. And then week 12 will be product lifetime management systems, PLM systems, and that's going to be visiting lecture as well. And then some additional topics. But here's the good news, or here's the big picture. So if you make a graph about how is the progress of this course, you already passed the peak. So now it's just the downhill. Now you can just sit down, lay back and enjoy. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And again, the next midterm exam is very, very pleasant. I'm asking your opinion, like how much you like about simulation. What is your name? What about the weather? You like the weather and this kind of stuff. So more a matter of opinion rather than really exact science. Okay, but that's going to be the next midterm exam. The first one is about hardcore stuff. Okay. Oh yeah, another thing. I know that my YouTube channel is a mess. I need to organize my lectures such that they are more recognizable and easy to follow. Also, the Moodle side is left behind, so I need to add all these PowerPoint presentations to my Moodle side. What else? Is there something else that I'm missing? So once I make my YouTube channel to look good and my Moodle to look good, are you then happy? You are. Okay, so I'm not missing anything. I don't think that I'm missing. Or am I? I'm not sure about that. Okay, so I am missing, I forget something in the very beginning. Okay, I got the phone call from the local company called Mevea. The Mevea is the spin-off company from the university. You know, the one that is making these real-time simulation softwares and platforms and so on. So they called and they said that, is there anyone that come and help them? So they will be very flexible to make all kind of contracts with the students that are more or less familiar with the subject matter of simulation. So if you're interested, go ahead and log into Mevea website, put your contact information to website, and they will get back. And they say that, you know, they can offer you flexible hours, contract with a certain number of hours per week, whatever you want. Because they really need more people to help them. So check out. Don't know any more details than that, but they will tell you for sure. So please log into their website. All right. Now with that, let's move on and let's summarize what we discussed last week. You know, here's a kind of a summary about the model reduction technique. And I know that you may want to vote out some of the matters related to model reduction technique up on the midterm exam. But for sure there will be something in midterm exam that is related to a model reduction technique. So let me summarize the whole story for you. So here's the summary. In finite element model, you can create the equation of motion such that you can have a representation of inertial forces, this one here, elastic forces, and externally applied forces. That's equation of motion. Now, problem in this form of equation of motion is the fact that typically dimensions are very hard. So if you look at the matrices you're dealing in this set of the equations, we can easily have here vectors that includes the unknown that could have 100,000 units, 100,000 components, maybe 1 million components, making it difficult to use this equation as it is as a part of the multi-body system. Now we wanted to reduce the size of the unknowns. That's the target in model reduction technique, as the title implies, model reduction. So we're reducing the size of the problem. How are we going to make it happen? We're going to make it happen by using a trick that we are moving from nodal degrees of freedom to modal degrees of freedom. So what's the big difference? Nodal to modal. Again, you recognize the difference. Nodal to modal. So the difference is that in modal coordinates, you're looking at the certain assumed deformation mode of entire structure. Ways that the nodal degrees of freedom are moving with respect to each other. With respect to each other. How much they move, that we don't know. And those are those famous modal coordinates. So we are looking, these are the possible deformation modes. How much this one particular deformation mode will contribute to the final response. We don't know. But if multiplying this way to the system can deform by unknown modal coordinate, that's exactly what we're going to do. All right, so how is that you can get these assumed deformation modes? Well, actually, there's many different ways to get them. But maybe the most straightforward way to do it is by using an eigenvalue analysis. And in eigenvalue analysis, we are ignoring externally applied forces. I will look at what are the eigenvalues and corresponding eigenvectors of one structure. All right? Eigenvectors, which showing the way that the structure can deform, those are with our particular interest. Those are the ones that we wanted to take a look. And now if you have a finite element model that consists of that 100,000 degrees of freedom, that means that there's 100,000 different ways that the structure can deform. Now some of these ways are more important than others, making it possible to ignore some of the deformation modes. And that's exactly what we're doing in a model reduction technique. So we are ignoring some of the deformation modes. And that's it. Now, saying all that, saying with the mathematical terms, so it goes such the way that we are moving from nodal degrees of freedom to modal degrees of freedom. And look at this is important. So this is no longer equal, but it's an approximate. Approximate because number of modes used here will be less than the original, in your original finite element model. That's what it is called modal reduction. All right, now comes the big question that you asked last week, like, okay, how to select these modes? And that's what we're going to discuss today. What are the ways to select these modes? And it's of course very, very critical. There are certain techniques you can use to make your model to be as accurate as possible. But strictly, generally speaking, usually the deformation modes that are associated to low natural frequencies are typically contributing more than those ones that are having very high frequencies, as a rule of thumb. But there are special cases, of course, and you cannot use this as always the case, but that's often the case. All right, so what happens mathematically when we're moving from nodal coordinates to modal coordinates? Now, if these assumed deformation modes are orthogonal, meaning that they're independent with respect to each other, that gives us a miracle. That was that an eighth miracle in this world, or I lost the track of the ID number, but it was one of the miracles in this planet. You know, what happened then was that when we're moving from here, from nodal, let me take these off. Hold on. So when moving from these nodal degrees of freedom, using this relation to modal degrees of freedom, this is what happens for us. Now we have inertia that is expressed in terms of modal coordinates. And that's this one here, where I have my original mass matrix that is then first multiplied by transpose of assumed deformation, and then with the deformation. And then I have my elastic forces in terms of modal coordinates, and then external applied forces. Now the theory of the method is that if this one here is a matrix, orthogonal matrix, it means that modal coordinates are not related to each other, but instead they're independent. So you can take any modal coordinate you want and solve that as a 1 degrees of freedom system. Take another one, solve that as a 1 degrees of freedom system, and keep on adding the results, you get better and better solution. So you reduce the size of the problem and you get a more favorable mathematical form. That's what the modal reduction is about.
The sound is irritating.
Oh, I see. Because I thought that you were paying attention to me because you were so focused, but it was all about that noise. Sorry, I thought that, okay, finally it's going to happen. Okay, so what noise is it? I don't hear any noise. A little bit of noise. So it's coming someplace. Can you live with that?
No.
Let me see. Oh, I figured I could take it off. Okay, so it's off. Is it better?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. Now, what was the thing that I was about to explain? Modal reduction. Big picture of modal reduction. Now you got the concept of modal reduction. Yes. Okay, good. Now the obvious question is that, okay, now to carry out the eigenvalue analysis, to make this to be equal to 0 and use these two components, you can introduce the boundary condition in your finite element model in many different ways. So what's the way that is the most appropriate? And last week we looked at the example. Now this is important. This is in this particular example. You cannot make any more general conclusions based on this example. But in this example, we were wondering how one should actually set the boundary condition. Three choices. There was a free boundary condition, meaning that no boundary condition. So you just take whatever structure you have, put it in a space, look what are the eigenvalues and eigenvectors. Then there was a simply supported beam boundary condition, which eliminate rigid body modes. And then finally, cantilever beam kind of boundary condition where one end of the beam-like structure is coupled to ground. And I was asking, like, which is the correct way to do it? In this particular case, each one of these examples produce more or less same solution. And why is that? Because really what we are after here is a deformation shape. Shape remains more or less same in each one of these examples. And this is a kind of the feature of the floating frame reference formulas. Remember, one of the questions in in-class quiz, and it can be also in a written exam, is where the term floating is coming from. It's coming from the fact that you can compute these eigenvalues, these deformation modes, without introducing any boundary condition. And in that condition, the reference coordinate system is not attached to any material point, but it's kind of floating with the body. But that's confusing, like, so is it attached or not? And the answer is yes and no. Now what that means? It means that if you're looking at the large reference translation and rotation, yes, it is attached to body. But if there's a deformation, then it's no longer attached to body, but it will be off from the material point based on the amount of deformation. Confusing. A little bit confusing. Okay, now one thing that, remember that I always been saying that the floating frame reference formulation cannot be used to capture nonlinear strain displacement relationship. And yes, it cannot be used to do that. But there is one interesting assumption in that. And that assumption is a cantilever beam. So now in a cantilever beam, like this, if you're loading your cantilever beam from the free end, and you're using boundary condition based on this option, first option, what will happen is that there will be a deformation roughly like this. And now because of the deformation, the body reference coordinate system will be leaving or translating and rotating from a material point. And that makes it possible, if you look at this end carefully, it's making it possible that there is a little bit of displacement in the axial direction. And that's simply not because of the modes, but because of the movement of reference coordinate system. Got it? Okay? Okay, but that's just an exception, so it's just a special case. All right, so now, this eigenvalue analysis is a very general and quite straightforward approach to get these deformation modes, but it's not very easy to use because it's actually a lot of requirements to the user. It makes it often very difficult to set, in general case, how the boundary conditions should be introduced in your final settlement model, or if using anything at all. So actually there are methods that are quite general and allow us to look at allow us to kind of create the deformation modes that can capture the local deformation fairly straightforward manner. And the local deformation you may be needed if, let's say that you have, well, let's give an example. If you have like just the cantilever structure like this. In a cantilever structure, when you loaded this, this is heavily asymmetric. How is a final strain and stress distribution? So because stresses will be of course highest here and the lowest here. And making it possible to describe this kind of asymmetric condition with just a free or any kind of boundary condition, free boundary condition, that's a little bit difficult. So to be able to create a method that fits for different kind of problems, there is a method that is called Compton method. And that's what I'm about to explain you next. All right? Again, I will ask, what's the reason to use a Craig Compton in a minute? And the reason to use a Craig Compton, now you need to listen to me because I'm going to ask this. The reason to use a Craig Compton is that it allows to describe local deformation due to the forces or joints in a very straightforward manner. Okay? So, they will be in class quiz where I'm going to ask, what's the reason to use a Craig Compton method? Answer is that it helps you to describe local deformation due to the forces of joints. Okay, got it? A hint. Strong, very strong. All right? Now, how this goes, how this Craig Compton method goes then. So let's take a look. So this is a method that you first go and select, not select, but categorize your nodal degrees of freedom into two different categories. The first category will be something that is called boundary nodal degrees of freedom. And those are, well, let me see, boundary degrees of freedom. And then rest will be called interior degrees of freedom. Now, what are these boundary degrees of freedom? Those are the ones that you're particularly interested because of the maybe joint location or pin force location, something that you would like to see how is the strain distribution in details in those particular locations. So those are the ones you're selecting as a boundary degrees of freedom. Rest automatically goes to that other category. Okay, so, and the selection have to be, you have to do it manually. So you're clicking this, this, and this. Those are the point of interest. All right? You have to have 2 or more point of interest because of the nature of the method. All right? Now, you do the selection. Now, what happens then inside of your finite element software is that software will reorganize the columns and rows of your mass and stiffness matrix such the way that boundary degrees of freedom will be corresponding, or will be located in a very beginning of the rows of nodal degrees of freedom. The corresponding part of the stiffness matrix will be located here. Then the rest will be coming later. And then there are degrees of freedom that are only related to internal degrees of freedom. And then mixing. And the mixed will be located in block off diagonal locations. All right. Then I have the same category in my elastic forces. So first I have my boundaries and internal, because of course this and these vectors have to be having the same organization all the time. And then I'm organizing perhaps my internal, my force vector in the similar manner. That's the kind of the mathematical trick you need to do. Then what follows is very mechanical. And what follows mechanically is that you're going to compute 2 different sets of deformation modes. First set of deformation mode will be based on eigenvalue analysis. So you're going to, some of the components, let me go back to this one here, and let me erase this one to make this clear. So once you have this categorization, then you're going to go and take this part of the stiffness, this part of, the mass, and this part of the stiffness. And using this information, you're going to conduct an eigenvalue analysis. So it's no longer the full system matrix, but submatrix from your system matrix. Typically, it's very large in dimensions, but still you just take it and you carry out the eigenvalue analysis. And you get eigenvalues, and more importantly, what is that we are after? You get eigenvectors, the deformation modes that are associated with those internal degrees of freedom. Soon we're going to take a look, because right now it's a little hard to understand, but what it means in reality. I will explain in a second. I will explain right now. Why don't just explain it right now? I can explain it right now. So here it goes. So I have here a beam-like structure, and then I'm selecting, say, this point here as a boundary degrees of freedom. And what else? Another point. Where can I select another point? Let's say that the other point that I'm selecting is this one here. Now, this first set of modes will be obtained such the way that these two locations will be attached to ground. Such the way that I'm introducing boundary condition to this node such that no translation and no rotation is possible. Same here. And then I'm computing my eigenvalues. How they will look like? Well, they will look like this. You know, here, I need to make this big. Here, you know, there is no translation, no rotation, and then there is a deformation like that. But of course, better drawing, but you got an idea. And then here, no translation, no rotation, and like this. This will be the lowest mode. Or maybe this end should be actually moving like this. Right, that's the lowest mode. Second, perhaps, would be, you know, I guess that it could be something like, you know, here, like this, and then like that. So, eigenvalues, such the way that no motion, no rotation in this point, and in this point. And then you just look how the system can vibrate. All right, so that's your first set of modes. You still with me? Don't get confused about the mathematics, because the mathematics is not that important. Okay, what are you going to do next? Next, you're going to take a look at the elastic forces only. No, the one that is stiffness matrix multiplied by nodal degrees of freedom, and then equal the external applied forces. And from that equation, you will solve internal degrees of freedom, these ones here. And you will get the new, this is just the taking parts of stiffness matrix using a little bit of manipulation and solve it. And you will get the second set of modes. Now this is quite interesting. So what is the second set of modes? Well, the second set of modes, there will be, by the way, no way to understand, you know, how they are based on this. But how they look will be, if we're going back to this example, this one here. Let me change the color to be black again. Here's my beam-like structure. And these are the boundary degrees of freedom. Well, let's just call it B. B. Okay, so what this second set of modes, how they look like? Well, they look such that I will keep all these boundary degrees of freedom locked, but one degrees of freedom is actually imposed, or actually is experiencing the unit displacement, where others are reminding how they are. You got it? No, you didn't got it, because there's no way to learn it from that explanation. But let me try how it means. So 1 degrees of freedom from the boundary degrees is actually imposed to have a unit displacement, and rest is as they are. How they look? Well, they look like this. You know, if I have here displacement, you know, this direction, and rotation in planar case. So I'm introducing the unit displacement here, and then others will be as they are. So this should be like this. So there is a angle here is 0, like this, pretty much similar than shape functions. That's the first unit displacement. Second unit displacement will be like this direction, moving here like this. Rotation would be like here. You got it. This should be, by the way, like this. Okay, that's how they are. That's the second set of modes. Sorry. So mission almost accomplished. So I'm almost done with my great Compton method. So now, let's just do the assembly. I will take my modes that are coming from my eigenvalue analysis. It's going to be this one, and the ones that are coming from that static computing, that's going to be here. And then I'm combining everything to one big package. That's it. And this one big package is the one where it includes the deformation mode, and it includes 2 different kind of deformation modes. The one that I call fixed interface normal modes, those are the ones that are coming from the eigenvalue analysis that we just look at. Remember that? And then static modes. And in the static modes, I have this unit displacement in boundary degrees of freedom, one at a time. Kind of making sense. Okay, this is unbelievably difficult. This is, if taking a usual subject matters in a master level, they are like here. This is, I don't know if it is enough to fit in this room. This is so difficult thing. And so no wonder if you got the headache or you're still all right. No, a little bit of headache. Okay, so let's have a break in a second, but this, we are almost ready to close this case, and this is really the extremely difficult thing. So if you don't get it, fine. Your fellow student have no idea. I can tell you that. All right? Now, two different set of modes, but you're still with me. So you got it, you understand how I got it. So let me summarize this briefly. What was that question?
Boundary degree of freedom, is it the same as a mode?
What's the number of degrees of freedom?
3, 4, 1 nodes.
Okay, so you're asking about how many modes we have, or how many modal corners we're gonna have, right?
For the first, fixed interface normal modes.
Yes.
You said nodes.
Okay, now this is very important. This is extremely important. It doesn't matter how you're gonna get your deformation modes. Deformation modes is always a vector that explains you how each one of the nodes in your structure will move with respect to each other. So that's the length that tells you the way structure can deform. Now this one way, very long column in your matrix, that's 1 degree of freedom. Then another deformation mode will be 2nd degrees of freedom, and so on and so forth. This is, by the way, extremely important to each one of you to understand. But this is already clear for you, is it? So it's all the time clear. So the number of degrees of freedom is moving from nodal degrees of freedom to modal degrees of freedom. So if there's one way that the structure can deform, this actually includes a lot of numbers, but it's still a one way, 1 degree of freedom. You got it? Nice question. Nice. Anything else? Should we discuss something?
The last part, can you repeat it?
Yes. Okay. But this is important to keep, to make sure that you understand. Okay. Let's take a look. And I have here D-mail, right? That consists of 1, 2, 3, 4 nodes. Okay? So there's an element between these nodes. Each one of the nodes have 3 degrees of freedom. All right? Now this is extremely confusing, but at the same time super important. All right? So how many degrees of freedom in total I have in my vector of nodal degrees of freedom? How many units? I have my first, second, all the way to, what is the final ID number? What was it? Okay, let's vote. So say 4 because of 4 nodes, 6 because it's 6, 12 because 3 multiplied by 4, and then 43 because it's 3 and 4. Those are the 2 numbers we're dealing with. Another way around. So, who is voting for 3? 4. 4. Okay, then 6. 12. Most of them. And then, no one? Seriously? Because it makes sense. Combining numbers is kind of handy, isn't it? Okay. The correct answer is 12. 12. Because I have here This one here consists of 3 nodal degrees of freedom. This one here has an additional 3. This one here, additional 3 and 3. So it's a 4 multiplied by 3. So this system consists of 12 nodal degrees of freedom. Let's then compute the first eigenvalue and corresponding eigenvector. How the eigenvector look like? Well, eigenvector, I need to take some stuff off here. So the eigenvector looks something that, you know, is this one here is giving me 12 numbers. 12 numbers that are showing me how these nodal degrees of freedom are moving with respect to each other. I don't know how much they move, but it's telling me the way it can move. And it could be a numerical representation of deformation mode like this. So it's meaning that my first value when it is moving axial direction is, you know, this is 0, then the next is having, say, 0.1, so on and so forth. It's telling me the way structure deforms. Now, this is then multiplied by an amplification, which is equal than unknown. Amplification together with the way that structure can deform, that is my final response. But this one here is just the way that the structure can deform, nothing else. Now, back to your question, what is the number of degrees of freedom? Original. And this is the beauty of the model reduction, because we're moving from 12 to lower number, depending how many columns we have, how many different ways we have. It could be just the one column. Then it's of course very limited, but it's 1 degrees of freedom that is describing the deformation. Clear. Should we think about this one more time? Let's one more time. Deep breath. Okay. Here's the deal. So I have here beam structure that consists of 4 nodes. Each one of the nodes has a 3 degrees of freedom. So when I'm comparing the eigenvalue and eigenvector, eigenvector tells me how these nodal degrees of freedom are moving with respect to each other. How much? That I don't know, but that's going to be something that I'm going to find out later. Not now, but later. So in when I'm moving from my nodal degrees of freedom to my modal degrees of freedom, I'm looking the way structure can deform multiplied by corresponding amplification. Makes sense? But now I got the last. How this is related to this Craig Compton? How was this? This is it. My memory is actually very strong, but it's short. I don't remember, you know, what was the initial story where I started this explanation.
Deformation.
Deformation, somehow.
About the local deformation.
Should we go in the first line today? No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. But there was something important. But I forgot that. Maybe not so important. It comes later, I think. Okay, I don't remember that anymore. Okay, so now we have 2 set of modes. This is where we could stop. We could stop here because we have a deformation mode that can actually capture the local deformation and they can capture the big picture. So we have the combination. But there is one minor drawback. It's not a serious drawback, but it's a drawback anyway. And the drawback is associated to these static correction modes. Now, by the way, do you know what's the drawback? If you know this, then this is, it will be hard to believe if you know this. It will be definitely worth a copy. I will stop this lecture right away and go and get some coffee or whatever you want. Beer, perhaps? No beer, but coffee or tea. So what's the wrong with the static correction mode? There's one beauty mistake in a static correction mode. It's not serious, but it's something that usually is fixed. What is it? Now this is way too difficult to know that. The problem is that the static correction modes are not orthogonal, so they are not independent. Is that a problem? A little bit, because once I take this whole deformation mode, this deformation mode, and once I multiply using this matrix to my original mass and original stiffness, I'm not going to get the diagonal representation. And why is that? Because static correction modes are not numerically independent. They are not orthogonal. So they are kind of combination of each other. So they are not coming from the eigenvalue analysis. So that's why they are not orthogonal. So they are linear combination of others. Well, is that a serious problem? Not really, but my final representation of mass and stiffness is not going to be diagonal. So some people, actually pretty much all the people, they prefer to fix this minor beauty problem. And now when you fix it, how is it you can do that? Well, you can do that by using a monster that is called Ortho Normalization. Now, here's the deal again. So you have a minor beauty problem, so your hair is not beautiful, so you want to fix it. And the way you're going to fix it is the monster comes and changes everything, everything, you're going to look completely different after that. So it's not changing the hair, but it's changing the how taller you are, how muscular you are, everything will be changed. How that goes? Because of the Ortho Normalization. So let's take a look. So it goes such the way that you take this previous representation of deformation, and then you take the original mass, the original stiffness, and you compute a new set of stiffness and elastic forces. This is already reduced. This is already smaller than the original size of the matrix. Then you're going to use these results here, and you're going to conduct eigenvalue analysis. Now this is what is called orthonormalization, because it's forcing things to be orthogonal, and that's exactly what it is doing. But when it is forcing everything to be in a certain form, it is actually affecting all modes, not just the original problem, but all of the modes. So you do this, you carry out the eigenvalue analysis, you get these deformation modes. Now they are orthogonal, but they look completely different than the original set. And then you can get final representation, which is diagonal representation. Okay, summaries here. So you get started here in any financial model. You don't need to use answers, but you can use whatever you want. First, you're comparing these fixed interface normal modes using eigenvalue analysis by setting the boundary degrees of freedom to be fixed to ground. Now, in this particular example that I'm showing you, I'm assuming that this end here is attached to ground, this is attached to ground, and this is attached to ground. Rest can vibrate however they want. All right? Then I have another set of modes, which is static modes, and then I'm using this monster that is called orthonormalization. Now, if I'm asking in a written exam, what is orthonormalization? Can you answer that? Kind of. No way. No way. You want to vote that off? Yeah, you can do that too. Okay. Now, because of the orthonormalization, all the modes will be looking very different. I'm going to get something that looks pretty much like free modes and something that are boundary modes. And now my representation is diagonal representation. That's the story in short. Okay, so let's take a look at them. Oh, here is my class quiz. So let's have this and then a break. And again, I promise you this. I'm going to just speak about some general matters, and then I will show you all the questions for exam. So you can already start preparing yourself to exam. Okay? Are you in a shock? because of this great bouncer. So you can, so what's wrong? So where is the communication? You don't remember how to speak because you're so confused. Okay, so great bouncer method is often used approach because it allows to describe local deformation to the forces and joints. It can be used for beam-like structures. It can be used for plate-like structures. It allows to describe structural damp. Now, my structure div is not yet on, but let me put it on. Okay. Not this one, but Socrates. Teacher lot. Yeah, it's a good idea to discuss with your fellow student to see, you know, if all becomes clear. So, this is what So what happened to this? Oh God, so how can I move this up? Because I need to select something that is...
Can you maximize the program?
Yeah, zip out.
Here, yeah, and now it goes. Yep. Teacher. Okay. Now you're good to go. Let me take this back. And then, what do you say? Can we have 10 minutes break? I need to go and, because this is so hard stuff, I need to go and get some coffee. So, okay, so let me take a look. So how is this? 7, 6, 4, 5, 6.
Is often used. Often used.
Four, so we back 4, so we back me down to 2 students. Fine. Okay, this is it. I don't think so, but you never know. You never know. So it can happen. The miracles can happen. Okay, ready?
Yes.
Good news is, look at the number. Look at the number. It's a very, very high number. It's a very, you know, that's extremely high number. So I'm going to just close this and make sure that you can answer. You can modify your answer. Okay, so 10 minutes. Okay, and then look, you know, here's my promise. So if you're coming back, you will see this. Also, the next week I will show you the exam, because international students and exchange students, do you know that all the previous exams are available in the student union website? You need to take a full advantage of that, and you need to go and take a look. But you know that those are, you know, the exams that were used last year and so on and so forth, they can all find, they're all available in that database. I hate that database big time. But what I can do? Well, hate it, but not more, you know, because it makes my life difficult, because all these questions is available there, then I need to try to modify my exams every year. So that's why I have this question now. So it's a big game. All right? But you know, all you know that what I'm speaking, what I'm saying is student union website. You know, sign your students, you know what that is.
No.
You sure about that?
What is it?
Okay, so let me close the recording and streaming and I will show it to you.